Hi, Joe Caminati here with Average Joe's Archery with another installment of our Archery 101. Tonight we're going to cover a little bit of arrow basics. So, one of the things, two different styles or two different groups of arrows. We have our target arrows here, we have our hunting arrows. To understand the differences of both, we're going to go through some of the components of an arrow. So we start off here at the front, we have our arrow tip. This is one of the biggest differences between a hunting style arrow and a target arrow, is the ability on the hunting style arrows to remove the tip so that we can put in a practice tip at one time and then switch out with a broad head for when we go out into the field. So biggest difference there, most of your target arrows are going to have a fixed or glued in tip versus the replaceable tip. Now we get into the shaft here. As you can see, they're made up of a lot of different components. We have our wood shaft arrows, we have aluminum arrows, fiberglass or carbon fiber, different composite materials, graphic infused arrows, and even some bright shiny colors. Back here we have our fletchings. The fletchings act as the steering wheel for the arrow that keeps the arrow straight and going on course as it goes downrange. Lots of different types of fletching. We have our feather fletching, turkey feathers on a lot of different arrows. We have plastic vanes of many different shapes and sizes and colors. So we can fit it to your needs. And then back here we have the nock. The nock is the connection point between the arrow and the bowstring. This one here is just a press-in nock. You can remove that. It's pressed into the inside diameter of the shaft. There's also a glue-on nock, such as right here where it's actually glued on the end of the shaft. And then there's what we call a pin nock, commonly used in a lot of target arrows, where we have this metal pin that's glued into the back of the arrow shaft that the nock just presses onto that pin. So now that we covered some of the arrow basics, we're going to get into the different types or uses of the arrows. So we'll start off here with the target arrows, and you can see that there's a lot of different diameters in the target arrows, and each one of these diameters kind of has a specific use. So if you can see that here, and we'll start off with the small diameter here. That's your field or outdoor arrow. That's going to be meant to go a long distance. That way it isn't affected by the different weather conditions or wind that you would face outside. Now here we have our standard diameter, or this could even be considered a beginning or entry-level target arrow. This one is built for the indoors. It has turkey fletchings on it. Turkey fletchings are a little bit more susceptible to weather conditions, so most of the turkey feathers that are shot nowadays are shot indoors. Then we have our larger diameter arrows. This is a 23/64 Easton Fat Boy. This can be used for 3D, can be used for indoor fixed distance target, whatever, a lot of different versatility with that arrow. And then we have our large diameter. This one happens to be a Victory X Killer. This is a 27/64 diameter arrow. Sole purpose of this arrow is to break lines on a target, because the more lines you break, the higher the score you get. So it's better for your target score or target round. Now moving over to the hunting arrows, a couple of things to consider is your budget and what you're going to be using for. When you're just starting out, you know, your general purpose hunting arrows are going to be great. These are S diameter, standard diameter, work great for a lot of things. They can be used for both target and they can be used for hunting. But as you progress through the shooting process, you know, you might want to get something that's a little bit more specific to your use. You know, and they make graphic infused. So the graphic is actually part of the arrow shaft here. This can't get scraped off. And they also make smaller diameters. The whole purpose of the smaller diameter arrow, such as the Victory Rip and the Victory Vap here, is just for greater penetration and less wind resistance when you're out there in the field trying to take a game animal. So some of the things that we're going to need to know to help fit one of these arrows to you is the draw length that you're shooting, what kind of bow you're shooting, and the draw weight you're shooting. Those are going to help us determine what spine we're going to recommend, or maybe even what arrow shaft we're going to recommend for you. The spine of the arrow is actually the stiffness of the arrow, or how much the arrow flexes when you shoot it. That's measured, mainly they put that on centers. They hang a weight on here and they measure the flex or the deflection in that arrow, which tells them the spine. The stiffer the spine, the higher weight you can shoot on your bow, and that's extremely important. If you shoot too weak of a spine and you get too much flex, that arrow is going to oscillate downrange and you're going to have inconsistent groups. If you get too stiff of an arrow, instead of flexing enough to accept the energy of the bow and launching straight, you're going to get what we call tip walk, where that tip is going to be moving around on you, once again causing oscillation going downrange, and you're going to have inconsistent groups. So it's always important to consult an archery technician. That way they can help determine the right spine, make some recommendations on what arrow is going to work best for your conditions and what you're going to use it for. Another reason to go to an archery technician is customizing your arrows. You don't have to select an arrow directly off the shelf. All of these arrows are available to be built completely from scratch to your specifications. So say you want specific fletching colors or specific fletching types, we can build an arrow specifically for you. Some of the other accessories that you're going to need when you're using hunting arrows, you're going to need a broadhead, field tips. There's a couple of different styles of broadheads. This one here happens to be what we call a fixed blade broadhead, meaning the blades don't move during flight. What you see is what you get. This one happens to be a 4-blade fixed blade broadhead. It does have replaceable blades, but this has become an issue the faster the bows get nowadays. With the surface area here, we get a lot of effect and a lot of poor flight characteristics. So they also make what's called an expandable. And you can see this, very low profile. It's not going to be as affected by the wind or air moving over it, but when it hits this target, the blades will deploy, creating a larger cut diameter. So another thing that your archery technician can help you determine what's going to work out best for you. So once again, thank you for joining me for our Archery 101 here at Average Joe's Archery. If you like what you heard, comment down below. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please give us a comment down below, or you can use our contact form on our website, averagejoesarchery.com. Once again, thank you and have a great evening.